Hey everyone, Sarah here at Three Little Potters, and today I'm going to go over how I photograph my pottery. I'm going to give you some tips on lighting, location, camera settings, and then we'll go through some editing and some optimization for getting your photos online. You can think of this as more of an intermediate lesson. I'm going to go over tips that you'll be using a DSLR camera for. This video is assuming that you already know how to use your camera and some of those basic camera concepts. So your specific camera, you may need to look at a few more YouTube videos from other people that kind of delve into how to get to some of your camera menus. But for the most part, I'm going to go over more of the concepts rather than the settings specific to any camera. So yeah, I'd love it if you kind of stuck with this, and in future videos, I'm going to do a more advanced that talks about artificial lighting and how you can use that to sort of help your photography or allow you to photograph at more times of the day than just good window light. All right, I'm going to turn you around here to look at my setup. So this is where I take photos of my pottery pretty much every day. Sort of behind here, you can see some of my inventory shelving. This is something that I built last year when I was sort of having an overflow off the table. Yeah. So these are some new tiles that I just grabbed today, these darker ones. But I normally use this gray tile setup here. So for this setup, what I'm doing is I'm just using tiles. These are regular granite or marble tiles that I got at Lowe's. And I'm literally setting them just on a piece of plywood that I have propped up. So it's very easy to sort of change out. Now, the other method that you can take, if you don't want to like buy heavy individual tiles at Lowe's, is you can get these backing boards on Amazon. And these are 2 feet by 2 feet. They're foam core backing boards. So this is the more expensive option. So Amazon backing boards, I believe I got this one and I got this one, and they were $40 in total. These tiles from Lowe's, which I actually think look a little bit better because they're real stone, these were $4.10 each. I bought 2 of them. So this is a temporary setup. As you can see here, I have it on a hinge. It's propped up with a 2x4. This piece right here is just resting. Shelf mess behind. So you can change it out if you want. Now the other thing I'd like you to notice about this setup is that it is gray. I am intentionally choosing things that are a very matte finish and gray. If you want to think back to photography years ago, you would get a gray card that you would meter your light off from so that you can kind of get a good range for what you're shooting, so that you would know how to program in your camera. And even with our high-tech digital cameras today, having a gray background will really help your settings be more color accurate. This is especially important if you're not used to color balancing, if you're not used to correcting for slight color variations, degrees of color. You can get, a little bit of a green cast from the grass outside, even because I'm here at this window. Things like that you're going to want to be able to correct for. By using a gray background, you're not going to have to worry about that. Your camera is going to, for the most part, choose the correct color balance for what you're shooting, and you're not going to have to really get into color theory. But we could do that another time if you wanted to. But yes, less editing is better. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of how we do this specifically, I'd like to say too that when you're choosing to photograph your pottery, you really want to photograph as much as you can each piece that you're selling. When I was starting my shop, I did a lot of research and I looked at what negative reviews were for different shops. And it's usually not about the quality of the pottery or anything like that. It's when a customer receives something in the mail that doesn't look like what they were expecting. So for pottery, it's very easy to want to do a stock photo for all of your pieces. Like, oh, I've got this picture of plates that I make in this glaze that I mix. But oftentimes we've got variations in our kiln, we've got variations on an individual piece. Buyers don't love that. They want to know what they're getting, what they're paying for, because they can't be there in person. They can't pick it up themselves. So it's very helpful if your photo matches the piece that you're selling. You know, if you got something out of the kiln and it looks different, I would encourage you to take a picture. I feel like people would rather have maybe a picture that's not a stylized shoot if it is the exact item that they're getting. So yeah, so really consider that. I early on made that decision, and you'll see it in my reviews. If you page through my store, you'll see, oh, item looks even better in person, or, you know, just like the picture, exactly what I was expecting. You know, that helps grow your business. So you want their expectations to be met, and you want to be accurate with your photography. So on the topic of accuracy, I will also caution you to not over edit your photos. What we're looking for here is something that correctly and accurately represents the piece of pottery. You know, it's very easy to get on the editing software now and be like, oh, I'm going to drop out the background, and all of a sudden the levels are being cranked way up, and my whites and blacks, and it looks awesome, right? You can do so many things. You can, you know, clarity it to 60, you know, there's a lot of settings, and I would caution you against going too far, because when you go too far, yes, the photo is amazing. Does it still accurately represent what you're selling? And I see that across the board, besides other weird lighting issues. Let's look at where I've chosen to set this up. So I'm by a window here, and if you're looking out the window, the sun is going to go like that through the day. I'm not shooting this in direct light. I have window side light coming in. You are photographing a three-dimensional object. When you're photographing a three-dimensional object, you want to see a shadow. You want some directionality to your light. You can see here, even on this terrible cell phone screen, you can see that I've got a shadow here. It's giving it a three-dimensional look. So besides allowing your piece to have a shadow, another thing that you're really wanting to do is you're going to want to give some blur to your background. The bokeh of your background is really going to help your piece sort of stand out. So when we're looking at a piece here, we're going to be looking at setting our f-stop. We're going to be looking at that number and how it relates to the piece. So let's look at my camera back together a little bit here. If you can see right now, I'm on f3.2. That's this number right here. I'm shooting this in aperture priority mode. I'm going to usually shoot my pottery and other product photography. If it's small, I'm going to probably use something like f4. A quick primer on f-stop and how it relates to pottery. So we're looking at this piece right here, and the lower the f-stop, the less you're going to be in focus, the less amount of space you have in focus. So if you were like at f2, then maybe only this band of the cup is going to be in focus. If you were at f4, this band may also be in focus. So you would have the whole cup being in focus. Now, if you want the background blurry, you're going to get it if you have enough space between your cup and the back of your background. So if your background was right here and you're shooting this cup at f4 and you're focusing on the front section of the cup, it is likely this background is still going to be in focus. At f2, you may get some blur here. If you want your background to be very creamy, then you're going to want to increase this distance from your cup to your background. Now, occasionally it'll happen that you're photographing a larger piece that stretches back, and you want this section as well as this section to be in focus. For that, you would want to start upping your aperture so that you have more of a range that will be in focus. Most lenses that are commonly sold with DSLRs will have something like a 4 or a 5.6 as their lowest f-stop. I would start there. Start with your lowest f-stop, see how your focus looks and see how you feel about it. If it's not what you're looking for, then there are some cheaper lenses that you can look at. Nifty 50 would be one, where it'll give you that lower f-stop to sort of give you that creamy background that you're looking for. Also note, if you are shooting with a zoom lens and you would like it to be more creamy, the background, right? So you're going to, if you're zoomed all the way out to your maximum and you're getting further back from the item, your background is going to be more blurry than if you were at your lowest sort of zoom range. I will also often use a bounce panel. You can see here, depending on how my window light is coming through, I may choose to put it here. You can kind of watch the light come over the cup just to even it out a little bit if needed. Also, don't underestimate the clothing that you're wearing. If I'm not getting enough light for a photo or the light's not falling exactly how I would want, I will definitely, if I'm wearing a color, I will go change into something white so that my body becomes the bounce panel. I am, standing over this pottery. I'm very close to the pottery. I want the light that's coming through the window hitting my shirt. It's bouncing onto the pottery. I don't want to have a green cast onto my pot. It happens very much if you have mirror glazes, very glossy glazes. What you're wearing can be reflected in the piece, and you don't want your glaze to have a color cast that it doesn't have in real life. So yes, if you're photographing a lot of pottery in a day, consider wearing something neutral. If you're having lighting issues, consider wearing something white. You may have also noticed that I have a clip-on gooseneck device here, and that is for shooting video of my piece. So what I will do is my camera, which I'm using my cell phone for this, pops right in here, focused down on the object. Camera focus pops right in here, focused down on the object, and then I will literally try to mimic what I think a customer would do with this in their hand in an actual store. So what I'm looking for is I'm showing them the inside so that they can see if there's any pinholes or any imperfections. And then I'm going to turn the cup in my hand just like you would if you were shopping in a store. And I'm going to show the bottom too, because you're going to look at the bottom in the store. You're not trying to hide any imperfections. If there's anything odd about your pot, you want people to know. And you're not trying to trick them into purchasing it. You're trying to give them an accurate representation. So right here, you can see, do you see this color on the side right here? So my husband has put a blue pool outside of this window to soak logs for growing mushrooms, and I am seeing its reflection in the side of my cup. So I'm seeing some blue and I'm seeing the green of the grass. So that is probably something I'm going to be fighting with all summer long. Yeah, so reflected light, even when inside, can be a hassle. A couple more points to get into while we're still just sitting here. I'm shooting these images in RAW format, well, technically compressed RAW on my camera. You may be shooting yours in JPEG or you may be shooting yours in RAW. So the difference between the two files is that a JPEG is going to be compressed. And with photography, what you're going to see is that, you might lose information in the file in your highlights and a little in your shadows if you're shooting in JPEG. So if you do decide to shoot in JPEG, then you need to be a little bit more careful about your exposure when you're taking the initial photo. So go ahead and take the time to, if you need to compensate for the exposure, add a stop, subtract a stop, so that you're kind of more dialed in than you would be if you were shooting in RAW and planning to edit in post. So I would shoot some in RAW if it's not too much of a file size hassle for you. make sure you're getting lots of different angles when you're photographing. So I'm looking at getting that top angle. I'm looking at focusing here so that I'm getting this zone. And then because it's a little weird sometimes to have this in focus but not the side that you're first seeing, I sometimes don't even use this one, but I'll do the front edge here. An edge here. Spinning a little bit each time. And then I will always photograph my piece with a ruler. Now there are lots of different items you can use. Some people use the 1-inch block. I sell a lot of pieces, right? So I'm not trying to be super stylized with these photos. I'm just trying to get it done and get it listed. So I will do this because especially when you're going back over your pieces to list your stuff, you're not going to remember what size everything is. So if you have a picture that shows the size, not only does it help you when you're making your listing, but it also helps people who are looking at it. So I will do a diameter and I'll do a height. And I also photograph the bottom of my work. And you could use a chair doing this, but I've been trying to get my squats in so that I am getting exercise while I'm doing this. All right, let's take this over to the computer and look at our images and do a little bit of editing. All right, I'm over here at my computer and I have just imported the images that you just watched me take. If you scroll back through my timeline, you can see some other images that I took last night for more products that I will be posting. So the first thing that I do when I get in here is I'm going to crop these all square for Etsy. So I'm going to select my first one. I'm going to go to my last one, hold down the shift key, crop one by one. So I've done the crop. Now I'm going to look at each image and I will often batch edit these to make it quicker. So I will look at 3. You can sort of see that these 3 have similar lighting. I'm going to make sure that my horizon line is straight. And I'm going to do very minimal editing for these. So this is our F2, and I don't know if you can, maybe I can zoom in for you here. This is our F2 on the computer screen. And you can see that we're really having, it's a little bit more out of focus on this edge than I would like. So the background good and creamy, but that edge, I would like it to be a little sharper. Let's see it in F4. This is the F4 version. Let's zoom in a little bit here. So you can see that at F4, we're getting more definition on that edge. For comparison, this is it at F11. Now here, your background isn't as creamy, and you're definitely getting the crisper line here. All right, so what settings do I change on these? These photos are actually, they are not bad by themselves, but I am going to go in here to the F4 where, all right, so what I will change is, actually the exposure is pretty accurate. I'm gonna drop our blacks a little bit and I'm gonna up our clarity just a little bit, and I'm probably gonna brighten it just a teensy bit. And that looks pretty good to me. If this was bothering me, this highlight zone here, that's sort of my multiple windows reflecting in the gloss, then I would start bringing down the highlights. But because we shot this on a gray background already, we're really not having to get in here and mess with the degrees of temperature or anything here. We're already shooting very accurately. And I like the nice subtle shadow here, and yeah, I think the darker gray slate tile is looking nice. Let's look at it on this purple bowl. And I will also say that looking at this iPhone screen, you're seeing more of a color cast than is accurate on my screen. My screen is actually does not have a yellow color cast. That is just from the iPhone software. Yeah, you know, honestly, these really, I'm making very, very minor changes here, but the way we shot this is already looking really good to me. I think that that is a really nice, accurate representation. I just adjusted the shadows a little bit here. I feel like that might be a little strong. I might even go a little further there. The photograph looks nice with the heavy shadow here, but I really want people to be able to see that, yes, this autumn purple over pearl glaze looks really great on both sides. Okay, and you can see what my settings were here as far as what lens I was using. Yeah, pretty nice. Let's edit this one a little bit more. Usually the one with my hand in it and the ruler is usually kind of the one that you have to do the most editing to. Pop those shadows out a little bit. And yes, it's largely just a picture of the ruler because I don't want people arguing with me about, oh, I thought it would be bigger. Oh, it's not this or that. I make a lot of small bowls and I want people to know they're small bowls and I want them to know exactly how big they are. So let's talk a little bit about export settings for Etsy. So I'll go to File, Export. I keep my photos for Etsy in a subfolder called Etsy. And I'm gonna go right down here. I am outputting these images into a JPEG format for online viewing. My quality is at 90. I could make these files very, very large by going full quality, but it's usually not necessary. That last 10% of a JPEG, I really usually cannot tell the difference. And then I am going to have them resized. So these are, my camera takes huge files. So I'm resizing them back to 3000 pixels, either width or height. And that is great. And then I'm gonna hit export. I hope you found some of that helpful and interesting. So just to kind of summarize things up, finding a gray neutral background, using window light rather than being outside is very helpful, and using not direct window light but side window light, if that makes sense. F4 for a camera setting, 3000 pixels for an export, and then really considering how far away from your object is from the start of your background so that you're really giving that depth, that separation, and then your photos will look even better and you will sell even more stuff online. If you found this video helpful, I'd love it if you liked and subscribed to my channel. I'm going to do a lot of different videos about the things that I'm making, how I'm making them, how I'm succeeding as a small business owner, and whatever other content you guys want to see. So that's all for today. Like and subscribe. Thanks.